Hello, this is Doug Brunke with the Global Chamber, and today I'm with Wendy Jameson, CEO of Colnatech.
Yes.
Wendy, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
My pleasure.
Could you tell us a little bit about Colnatech?
Sure. We are a manufacturer of scientific instruments for making things, making consumer products. It's basically a tool that goes into another tool that makes the high-speed electronics and optical components that are used in a variety of industries today.
Fantastic. How long have you been involved?
I've been with the company since the founding. My partner, Scott Grimshaw, and I founded the company in late 2009. So we began manufacturing in mid-2010. So it's really only been just over 4 years, 5 years total.
One of the things that makes you unique, I think, is that you have a marketing background,
I do.
And here you are as the CEO, and so and you've been involved with the business from the beginning. So as a successful CEO and CMO, basically, right, with a head of marketing, how important is a good global marketing plan as you launch a business?
Well, I think it's important for any business to have a really good plan to begin with anyway. What is it that you want to market? Where do you want to take it? Have a good sense. But in a small business especially, you are the brand. Especially in what we do, because we were doing early stage products, the plan changes, it evolves, it grows. But our product, at least in the early years, was heavy research based, required a lot of understanding, a lot of learning on my part, because I had not come from a semiconductor background. I'd worked in a variety of industries, but not in semiconductors. So I had to learn about what we were actually trying to market, who we were trying to be. But we found that in order for people to really adopt our product, we were the brand. We had to get out and create what it was, and it was based on who we were. They had to come to trust us before they could trust the product.
Okay, so building credibility really was based off of your own credibility or your connection to other people as potential customers, as potential partners, that kind of thing? Definitely.
And my business partner had many years, probably 25, 30 years already in the industry. So we built upon what he already had and the people that he already knew. So early on, we flew to Korea. The first thing I did after founding the company in January, we founded it in late October, and by January, we were on a plane to Korea to meet with representatives from Samsung. So he had those contacts from years past, and they introduced us to other people. And as we met more people, we built that brand. We did go in saying, we want the product to be this. We want the company to stand for this, because we're coming out with something completely new, totally different, new science. We invented it. We actually proved the science now and are able to market it fully.
How did you use your previous experience with the new venture, with Colnatech?
Well, it's interesting because I was coming in a lot of ways blind. I had to come in and learn everything about this science. My background being partly marketing, but also psychology, and I used the two of them together. I had been a business consultant for 10 years prior, and I was talking to mostly small business people about leadership and about presentations, about communication. So I used that to help Scott kind of form what is the sales pitch? How are we going to go forward? How are we going to get these sales? I use the psychology a lot, frankly, sitting in those meetings with Koreans and trying to understand what are they trying to communicate. Are we communicating? Are we getting our point across? And what point are we getting across?
Did you go into those meetings with a specific brand promise or brand that you were looking to communicate, or did that evolve over time?
Well, we did have a pretty strong idea of what we wanted, how we wanted to present ourselves. And I remember I remember sitting in the back of a car, because with the Koreans, you travel a lot. And they are very aggressive in the sense of you pack a lot in a day. They pick you up at 8 a.m., they drop you off at 11 p.m., you have dinner, breakfast, everything with them. So I can remember prior to each meeting, we'd go into the sales meetings, they have to be translated. Even though they speak really good English, many of them don't. And you're talking to, a room full of maybe 10 people who are trying to understand a very niche science, very specific. It's a metrology instrument for measuring film thickness. So it's a critical instrument, but most of them didn't really understand it. So I can remember sitting in the back after each meeting and talking with him about, okay, here's how we want to present it a little differently. They looked confused. Too much information here, not enough here. Stop talking when they're doing this. Stop talking. Let them talk. But also drawing out, okay, so we would use different models. And through the years, we have used these different models. Like we started with car models. Okay, it's a luxury brand. For this particular product, we want to present ourselves as a luxury brand. We want to go after the guys who know that they need the top of the line, the best whatever, and then you would build around that. Well, this product is perhaps better suited for, as you go down, like our standard products are the Hondas, and then this product, this very new product that we were introducing, that was going to be the like the Lexus or the Cadillac of the models. And that was something that they even understood. And when I've found that in our sales presentations, that when we use those kinds of metaphors, it helps them understand better. So they'll maybe understand cars. They don't necessarily understand football, for example, but they might do better with, Scott uses a lot of cycling metaphors to help them understand what it is that we're doing. In fact, one of our favorites is talking about how you've got this Lamborghini, you've got this $4 million system sitting in your facility, your fab, and yet you'll choose the cheapest product to put inside of it. Would you put the cheap tires on your Lamborghini? Use what's necessary to get you the results that you want.
Sure, that makes sense. Did you find that communication differed depending on which country you were presenting it in?
It did. It actually did a little bit. Depending upon, if they're big football fans in the UK or rugby, or if we tried to match it somewhat to what was relevant to them or what was relevant in the news. It would be silly for us to take our American, hey, we understand, I know football inside out and backwards, but a lot, and Scott knows cycling, but a lot of people don't really understand those. They just give you this blank stare. So you try to find something that makes sense to them.
Okay. Did you find other differences as you tried to market the product, whether it be in Germany or the UK or Korea, some of the key countries that you've worked in?
Differences how? What do you mean?
Besides how you might create some sort of a metaphor, where there are certain other things that you did, maybe certain other different ways you might explain it, certain ways of building credibility, maybe. Perhaps sometimes in Asia there's a higher bar in terms of things that you need to prove, either through testing or through proving that you've got testimonials or people that have had it successfully. Did you find that there were differences either continent by continent or country by country?
Yeah, I think one that specifically comes to mind was when we learned, we like to participate and really get to know the culture. And when sitting with our interpreters or sitting with our host, is usually a distributor or sales rep, we ask a lot of questions. And I recall one of the things that we did when we were in Finland was we would go out for a walk every morning or go out for a jog in the morning. And we discovered that as we passed people, they would always look down. They never looked right at us. And we commented on that. And someone said to us, yes, the Finns are very shy people. Get them drinking and they're different, but they're very shy people. And so we learned we had to talk a little slower. We also noticed that it looked like they weren't getting it, but mostly they were just processing it. And they're very shy. They won't necessarily speak up. So you can be more direct. For example, I talked about the Koreans. You can be more direct, more forceful, because it's going to be interpreted anyway. The same with the Chinese. It's going to be interpreted anyway, and you have no idea what they're saying. You just have to guess that your representative actually knows what you're talking about when they make the translation. But like with the Finns, we had to learn to slow down. They're just processing. You have to learn to really slow yourself, the way you talk down, how much information you present, particularly if you're going to a country where there is an interpretation, where we have interpreters. A number of the countries we go to really don't require it. English is the language of business, so it's not really been a problem to make sales presentations. And that's our preferred mode, is to go introduce ourselves. In fact, the way that we started was we would just attend events. I mean, we did go to Korea, we went to China, we've been to a lot of countries and just started making sales calls. But we like to go to trade shows and just literally walk up and introduce ourselves to everyone. And almost everyone speaks English. They'll always say a little bit. And we're, yeah, it's a little bit. You speak better English than half the people I know in America. So no, they largely understand. They can't necessarily feed it back to you. But we would go around and meet, shake hands with just about everybody. I think everybody that was relevant to us in a trade show, from Munich to I can't think. We haven't been to any Asian trade shows yet, but a lot in Europe. We were just at one in October in France, and again, you just go around and introduce yourselves and say, "Hey, can you direct me to? Can you give me the name of the person in charge of your process control systems?" And to a T. I mean, people always, especially in Europe, are very good at trade shows. They're all very good about giving you names. In solar, it was a little bit different. At some of these solar events in the earlier days, it was late days of solar, actually, early days of us, but they were a little bit more cautious because there was a lot of a very secretive nature. Nobody wanted to know who was using what instruments for their products, and they want to kind of protect what instruments they're using, what systems they're using, but you could usually kind of piece it together. You get a little bit of this and a little bit of this because you talk to everybody. And we literally wanted to talk to as many people as we could. You'd just be exhausted and your throat would be killing you at the end of a trade show. We didn't even need to be a presenter. It was just attending and introducing ourselves, sticking your hand out.
Did you end up doing some education or training ahead of time to learn some of the cultural things? It almost sounds like you decided to go out there and learned on the fly.
We did very much on the fly. Being sensitive, being diplomatic. I mean, Scott's more, I am who I am. I tried to be a little bit more diplomatic and understand. But when you get there, just watching for a little while, and you can learn a tremendous amount about the people and how they learn, how they interact, asking a lot of questions of the people that you work with. But for China, I did, before we went to Beijing, I think in 2011, into Shanghai, and then we got invited into Leshan, the city sister for Gilbert, when we met somebody, because I ended up telling people, hey, I'm going to China, and they said, oh, hey, do you know so-and-so? And then I'd call them up, or I'd send them an email and say, hey, you want to meet? And they would. People are very gracious that way. If you're going to come to their country, they go out of their way to make you, I've never been turned down anytime I've asked somebody, including Russia. So if I ask, people will grant me an audience, at least for 10 minutes. But I lost where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
Well, ultimately,
about China. That training in advance. Yeah, with China, the first time I went to Beijing, I called around. Gilbert and the people that I knew. I called GPEC. Nobody could give me the name of anybody who knew anything about China. And I hadn't met Karen yet, Karen Dickinson, who's fabulous. And I met her later for the second trip and called her, and she said, okay, this is what you need to do. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. A couple of things we adjusted in how we presented, or the information we gave, or how we approached the Chinese, and also in Taiwan.
Fantastic. So you've learned on the fly, you've picked people's brains, you've used other folks and their experience, and
right.
It sounds like it's worked out very well for you.
It really has. I think so many people are afraid to go international. There's this fear that, I don't know, that they'll reject you, or that you'll look like an idiot because you don't speak their language. And the fact is, they're just everyone we've met has been very gracious. And Americans, I think, are too afraid to we use text and email so frequently that we are afraid to call somebody up anymore. And it's really silly, because people aren't going to turn you down. I mean, if you look at it that way, you could say it's a cold call. But some of the cold calls that I did, which really wasn't, which was like, for example, we went to an event here for it was a Flex. It was a trade show that was held here in Phoenix, And a lot of international people came in for that. And they have it every February, so I'll probably go again. And it's not terribly expensive to attend. But we were walking around the trade show. We met a couple of people. In fact, the very first time I went to that, I shook hands with somebody from Applied Materials, which is a $27 billion company. They just joined with Tokyo Electron. And casually I said, "Oh man, I've always wanted to come to Germany." "Yes, yes, you come to Germany. We'll treat you to a beer or something." I said, "Oh, okay." Well, 4 months later, I called him up and said, "I'm coming to Germany." And he said, "Oh, okay." And he set up a meeting and they hosted us. And that, starting with one, then you've got a whole week and you just start calling people up and saying, I need to fill this. Would you be willing to meet with me? I'm flying in from Arizona and we're going to be talking about this. Would you like to sit down with us for 20 minutes? And they're all like, "Sure." So then, you begin to build it out. But going to that a year later, we walked around. We're like, we know everybody here. So we went upstairs and sat down in the bar. And we're just kind of sitting there chatting about, this isn't a very good one. And this guy comes and sits down right in front of us. He says, "Do you mind if I sit here? I need to write a letter to my twins." And he's German. And I look at his tag and I'm like, that's the chief scientific officer for Novaled, who just recently got bought by Samsung for $330 million. And he was one of the founders. And so now we're talking to him, and then he invites us, and then I've been back there. They're now a customer. They're one of someone from their team is now on my board of advisors, and we've become good friends. And it was all because it was a chance meeting at a trade show. Sit down and introduce yourself to people. That's it. So easy.
So it sounds like the lesson there is jump in and have a drink.
I think so. I think you just kind of relax. People relax a lot around a glass of wine or a beer, or if you invite and offer to buy someone a beer, they're all very interested in, sure, just sit down. They're tired and bored and want to talk to somebody too. And I don't know, maybe we're just more outgoing. I don't really think we are. I think it's a very easy thing to do. You just have to force yourself to make the opportunities to sit down and actually meet people. People think that sales is so hard, and how am I going to meet these people? Oh, it's way easier than you think. Just shaking hands.
Well, you have a psychology background. Yes. You're an extrovert, undoubtedly.
Oh, well, I'm actually not, but I can force myself.
Okay.
I have to.
There are periods of time where you can do that, right? And not everybody is, especially in the technical world. So you can see how that can be challenging to people, but you've got certain skills that will allow you to leverage your skills.
On that point, which is why I always encourage, I speak to a number of women's organizations, young women in STEM, and try to encourage them. Okay, so you're not necessarily outgoing. Partner. Okay, or you come from a marketing background. Partner. Those people need you. The scientists, the engineers, the people who are more introverted need your skill. And when you partner with them like we did, I would have never gotten into this if I hadn't met Scott. And he said, let's try this thing together, and an openness to learning something new. I thought, well, one, I was intrigued by the fact that he had already had some customers in foreign countries. I thought, wow, that's really cool. I like foreign countries. I'm interested in cultures. And but partnering allowed us to bring the best of both worlds together. He didn't particularly care to do certain things. He has to go in the back and make stuff where, I don't mind talking to people. Of course, he's really good about picking up the phone and calling somebody too. But coordinating things, you bring the outgoing together with the inwardly focused scientist, and it's a very good marriage.
Great insights. Really appreciate sharing those insights with us today. Wendy Jamison, thank you for your time.
Oh, that was easy. Thank you.
Okay. We'll be back, and we'll be talking about we'll step beyond marketing, and you've already done that to some extent because you've talked about sales, and we'll talk more about success factors in other regions in our next video. Again, thank you very much.
My pleasure.